Hi, Mr. Natural from Mr. Natural's classroom here, and today we're going to learn to read music by number on the staff. The first thing to know about reading music by number is that the clefs and the key signatures really don't matter at this level. The first thing to do is to see how the staff works in terms of enumeration without the clefs and without the key signature, and then later we'll show you how to decode it with those. So the first thing to know about decoding music on the staff is that the staff is made of lines, space, line, space, line, space, line, space. There are 5 lines and 6 spaces. And this is called a staff. Now on the staff, usually one of these lines or one of these spaces will be where the counting of the music starts. The first note, usually do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We are using interval distances or numbers to describe this. Doesn't matter what scale that we use, any scale would have the same enumeration, which is the first note of the scale is the number 1, the second note of the scale is the number 2, the third is the number 3, so on and so forth. If we analyze the patterns that occur on the staff, we will notice that if I start numbering, let's say, with this line here as my number 1, then this is 1. The next space would be 2. The next line would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're right back to 1. And it is just this simple. Now, if we look at all the lines, we will notice that on this line is the number 1, on that line is the number 3, on that line is the number 5, and on this line is the number 7. Another pattern occurs with all the spaces. The first space here is the number 2, the second space is the number 4, and the third space is the number 6. And what happens is the lines and the spaces tend to fall either on all of the spaces or all of the lines. So if we look, 1, 3, 5, 7 land on all the lines, and 2, 4, and 6 are landing on the spaces. This brings up a pattern which I call the circle of thirds. And here on the board I have drawn the pattern with a little symbol to help you remember it. The top is the number 1. If we skip from one line to the next line, we go straight to the number 3. We're skipping over 2. If we skip from the 3 to the next line, it's the number 5. If we were to skip from there to the next line, it would be the number 7. The next line would be, if we continued this pattern from 7, this next line would be 2, and the line above that would be 4, and the line above that, 6, and then it returns to 1. So this pattern happens over and over and over, and this pattern is called the circle of thirds. Now, the circle of thirds will help us decode the music into number codes and also give our eye something to learn to read the music with. This also gives us all the spellings for all of the chords in the diatonic series. A 1 chord would just be 3 notes, 1, 3, and 5. A chord in the 4th position of the scale would start with the number 4 and be 4, 6, and 1. And a chord starting on the 5th position of the scale would be spelled 5, 7, and 2. So this wheel, or circle of thirds, also spells all of the diatonic generic chords that happen. Another thing that this thing does is we have what's called the circle of fifths in music. And if we skip every one of these, 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, 4, we now have the circle of fifths, which we will show you later in harmonies how this is used to create chord progressions in music. Usually it goes backwards. 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, and 1. Now I can take this number pattern and I can place this on the staff anywhere I want, starting with the number 1 on any line or any space. At first I'm going to do just the lines. So if 1 is here, the line above will be 3, The line above that will be 5. The line above that will be the number 7. And the line above that will be the number 2. If we go to a ledger line above that, it will be the number 4. And if we do 2 ledger lines above that, it will be the number 6. And 3 ledger lines above that, and we return to the number 1. Going in the opposite direction, we have 1 going to the ledger line below. This pattern goes in reverse, goes from 1 to 6. 2 ledger lines below would rotate us down to the number 4, and 3 ledger lines below would rotate us down to the number 2. So now this is more than enough numbering to figure out how to read anything if the number landed on the first line. Let's take a look and see what happens if this same pattern lands on the next line above it. This would be 1, 3, 5, 7, 1 ledger line is 2, and 2 ledger lines is 4, and going down, 6, 4, 2 ledger lines below, 2. So you can see we have a 2.5 octave bandwidth here by doing this, and now the number 1 is starting on this line here. Let's see what happens if we start right here with the number 1. Here's the number 1, going backwards, 6, 4, 1 ledger line under would be 2, going forward, this space, going up to that line is 3, going through that space to that line is 5, and the next ledger line above would be 7, etc. Let's see what happens if we label this line. If that's the number 1, then this is 3, and the ledger line above that would be 5, and rotating this system backwards, 1, 6, 4, 2, ledger line under, 7, 2 ledger lines under, 5. Let's see what happens when we label the top one as the number 1. 1, 6, 4, 2, 7, 5, 3. And going up, 1, 3, 2 ledger lines, 5. So you can see if I place the number 1 on any one of the lines, I can use this wheel to label all of the lines, rotating the wheel forward, going up, rotating the wheel backwards, coming down. And it would be the same thing if any one of these spaces were the number 1. If I start below here, and this is 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, etc. If I start with it here, this is 1, going back, 6, going up, 3, 5, 7, 2. If I were to start here, this would be 1, 6, 4, going up, 3, 5, 7. If I start here, 1, 6, 4, 2, 3, 5, and if I start on this top space, 1, 6, 4, 2, 7, and going up 3. So you can see we have now labeled all of the spaces using this pattern of every other thing. Now, in this case, the lines would also follow the same pattern. Between 1 and 3 would be 2. The next line up would be, of course, 4, 6, 1, 3, 5, etc. So now how do I apply this concept to keys? Well, first we're going to start with the keys that are the most popular for the guitar, which are the key of G, D, A, and E. These are the most popular keys played on the guitar, and all of them have one thing in common: they all use sharps in their key signature to show us where the number 1 is.